begin tonight's Board of Trustees meeting. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence to honor our fallen servicemen and women. Thank you. Good evening, and thank you all for attending tonight's meeting. At the Memorial Day observance hosted by William Bradford Turner, post number 265, under the auspices of Commander Frank Towsons, former Fire Chief Larry Nedelka donated a flag drop box to the William Bradford Turner Post in memory of his parents, Frank and Joan, who passed away in 2020. Frank Nedelka previously served as commander of the William Bradford Turner Post, and his wife Joan served as president of the same unit. The village is going to place the flag drop box at the gazebo area on 7th Street. The flag drop box will allow village residents and visitors to donate their tattered and worn flags so that they can be properly disposed of. Thank you, Larry, for your generous gift to the village in honor of your parents. Upcoming this Tuesday, June 21st at 7:30 p.m., the St. Paul's Committee will have their first town hall session at Clewood Hall. Members of the committee will make a presentation of the potential building uses for St. Paul's main building and answer questions from residents. We hope you all can attend. I would also like to remind everyone during the summer months, the Board of Trustees will meet only once a month. The next meetings are scheduled for July 21st and August 18th, both on Thursdays at 7:30 p.m. in Village Hall. Now I'd like to begin with the Board of Trustees meeting, and Commissioner Jackson, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I have nothing on the agenda. Just yesterday I went to a meeting with all the Nassau County brass, the bosses and chiefs and inspectors. And the number one problem in the county right now, as well as the city and Suffolk County, is stolen cars. We had 2 in the last week. And they're really targeting high-end cars. But the fobs are left inside the car. It's very easy to tell when those cars have the key in them. They know the models, and when they see the mirrors out, they know the key's probably inside it. So please, if you remember, no matter what kind of car you have, please lock the car, and that will help us. So we've had a couple of instances where people were looking around for cars, and at least the cars are locked. We made some stops yesterday. County made a big arrest in the Five Towns area for a team that was hitting Nassau County hard. So we're trying to make inroads on that. But again, please just lock your car. That's all I have, man.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Jackson. Next is Fire Chief Perk.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Board of Trustees. We have nothing on the official agenda. However, I'd just like to make everyone aware that the recruitment video that I've mentioned several times at past meetings is officially out there now, the final product. We've had incredible feedback thus far. Several trustees have reached out, so we appreciate your support. And we actually have received some inquiries about joining the department from several members of the community. So far it's already paying off, and it's been less than a week. So,
Great news.
other than that, I'll be happy to answer any questions anyone may have.
Thank you very much. Next is Village Treasurer Irene Wolf.
Good evening, Mayor and Trustees. Tonight on the agenda, item number 1 is board authorization is requested to appropriate $6,109.22 from the reserve for compensated absences for a civilian employee in the police department who left village service. Item 2A is a transfer of funds for the 21-22 fiscal year in the amount of $288,236.57. To various accounts in the village to help fund the increases as a result of the CSCA rank and file and PBA settlement agreements that were completed in the 21-22 fiscal year. The rest of the transfers were requested by Mr. Swazi, and he'll get into those later tonight. I'd also like to provide a treasurer's report. As you know, we are currently in the process of closing out our fiscal year, 21-22. Our fiscal year ends May, and it typically takes about a couple of months to close out the year. So I'd like to give a summary of the results for 11 months of the fiscal year through April. I'll start out by looking at the revenues. So the report shows our year-to-date April results, full-year budget, and the percentage of the revenues received to date for this current fiscal year as well as the prior year for comparative purposes. And I'm also listing the full-year forecast. This forecast was developed in conjunction with the department heads during our 22-23 budgeting process back in January. So we revisit the forecast to see where we are, to track against that, our actuals versus the forecast, as well as the budget. We list all the funds of the village, and for the general fund, we also list all the different departments within the general fund. So for the general fund, year-to-date April, we have received revenues that have already exceeded the full-year budget as well as the forecast. I'll go through a couple of the departments that have already exceeded their budgeted revenues. In the building department, this mainly is comprised of building permit fees. And in this fiscal year, there have been a couple of large commercial projects on Franklin Avenue, and through April, we received about $500,000 in permit fees for those projects. The police and court revenues, this is mostly the revenues resulting from tickets that have been issued. If we take a look at the year-to-date April revenues received versus the prior year, there was a significant increase. And this has two components to it. The first one is resulting from last year. The courts were closed for a few months as a result of COVID. There was less activity, and so therefore the revenues were significantly impacted. So this year is showing a full year worth of revenues, or 11 months worth of revenues. The second component has to do with, if you could recall, back in November, the village engaged FBS to perform collection services for the outstanding parking tickets. And so as a result of that, based on our analysis, the village has received about $300,000 in increased parking revenues as a result of those efforts. But that increase has to be partially offset by the expenditures related to, paying FBS for their services, and that's about $150,000 through April.
So we're positive 150,000.
Yes, our net revenue for parking ticket revenues received is about $150,000. Under other general, as you may recall during the budget process, I mentioned that there were other tax items that the village, received this year. This was, we discovered that there were outstanding items due to the village from the owner and developer of the Marriott Hotel. They had entered into a couple of service agreements with the village back when that hotel was approved. And so they've agreed to make the village whole on village taxes because they did get an IDA from Nassau County, so they pay a pilot on taxes, but they have agreed to make us whole on village taxes. And so the amount represented under other general for the amounts that were due to the village was about $333,000 that we collected. Under the enterprise funds, as you can see, the pool revenues for this year were significantly greater than the prior year. The prior year represents the summer of 2020, which obviously was COVID, and the pool was negatively impacted by that. So this year, there was a big turnaround, and the revenues exceeded the budget. The tennis fund also is seeing revenues that are exceeding the budget. That has also done very well. The water fund, we're seeing the revenues year to date are less than the prior year. The water revenues also has two components. A portion of these revenues, most of the revenues related to this, comes from the water services, right? And that portion, we're seeing that there's an increase year over year as a result of increased water consumption. The reason that we're seeing a decrease in revenues was because in the prior year, the village received a significant amount of premium when the village issued the bans for the water well treatment projects. The ban revenues received in the prior fiscal year was about $1 million versus about $300,000 received this year. So there was a significant decrease. We are anticipating the revenue forecast for the water fund to be slightly lower going from 8.2 million to about 7.9 million. However, the revenues for the water, the anticipated revenues, still greatly exceed the anticipated expenditures, so we still anticipate seeing a positive net revenues for the water fund this year. The library fund, I just want to mention that they received a $30,000 donation from the Friends of the Garden City Library in April. And that $30,000 is being earmarked to help defer the cost of the Children's Room project. So we'll be appropriating that funding to that project. Under the expenditures by fund, we list the year-to-date results as well as the budget and the forecast. We also include encumbrances. Encumbrances are funds that are set aside for purchase orders. We are seeing that, based on our review, that the departments will be, are still expected to come in within their forecast. The forecast for expenditures is less than the budget as well. Back when we did the budget presentations, we mentioned that a portion of the surplus that we are anticipating will be used to offset the 22-23 budget. So we at that time anticipated using about 1.7 million. That's what we did allocate to the 22-23 budget in order to not have to increase taxes. And you know, we still, based on our review, still anticipate revenues and expenses to come within forecast. So we're still anticipating that surplus. Okay. On the next slide, this is generally just an overview of overtime by department. This is something that was requested by the trustees in the past to review. If we take a look at this year's expenditures of 1.6 million overall village-wide, in overtime, it's comparable to the prior year, even though there are changes within departments. In the prior year, the recreation and DPW saw increased overtime as a result of the cleanup efforts after Tropical Storm Isaias. And this year, we also have the impact of the raises as a result of the settlement agreements for the PBA and the CSEA rank and file. And the police department is actually showing the impact of 2 years of raises in this year as a result of their contract that had expired 2 years prior at the end of 2020. And overall, we're seeing that the overtime will be, you know, come in through May, you know, within budget. And that's the end of the summary. If there are any questions, I'll answer those.
Any questions from the trustees?
Okay.
Thank you, Andrea. Thanks very much. Next is Building Superintendent Giuseppe Giuliano.
Good evening, Mayor, Board of Trustees. I don't have anything on the formal agenda tonight, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions what we have at this time.
Superintendent Giovanello, hopefully I pronounced your name correctly. Just a question on the drawings that were submitted by a member of my third track committee, Paul Rothenbiller, in terms of making adjustments to Main Avenue. Obviously, one of the reasons is to kind of camouflage the lighting there, but also to make other adjustments overall to make it easier for residents that have to look at that station. The reason I asked that, and I appreciate the mayor sending out an email and kind of, you know, breaking down what we, you know, the time period. But I've spoken to both Alan Paskoff, who's the head of 3TC, as well as Anthony Tofano, the head of the railroad. And Mr. Paskoff said that he thought by October they would go begin repairing the roads. Now, whether that timetable stands up, I don't know. Part of Paul's project is that it would involve, you know, moving a curb and so forth, which would be affected by construction or repairing of the roads. So they hopefully could work in conjunction. Mr. Tofano said that the Community Benefit Fund, which we have 1.6 million left in, they would like an idea of how we're going to use it. the agreements say that we have until they're done and they're out of there, but I really don't want to wait till then. I don't think we should. So, do we have any kind of clear timetable to kind of move this thing along?
Well, to answer your question, Trustee Chester, Paul did send us the drawings. I'm reviewing the drawings with the senior engineer, John Baroni. It is on our agenda to review the intersections and the pass-through, both pass-throughs of Main Avenue, but with the agenda and the how should I put it, the workload at this time. I'm trying to get out a few more other capital projects that we're trying to establish right now to get out the bid and advertise before that. So it is on the agenda. I'm not sure the mayor didn't actually give a deadline. If the mayor gives us a deadline, we'll jump it forward. But we did get the drawings and we did do a schematic. Once that schematic is done, we'll send it to the board.
And I think the issue is because we are sort of on a deadline
I don't
from,
believe they can actually take away the beautification funds. I think the funds is still there and we can use it when we're ready to use it.
we can, but there is a time period. I mean, they suggested that to do it.
Yeah, it wasn't a specific time limit to use that money. I think more what Trustee Chester was talking about is the idea that we want to do this in conjunction with the work that's going to be done on the roadway, because it involves in part moving out. As you know, the curb is pushed in the first part as you go down the road, and then it comes out. And if we can pull it out to meet the other part, we can then hide some of the problems there, the big black, not a generator, but whatever it is. There are things that cannot be hidden at the moment unless we pull out the curb. And pulling out the curb also has the added benefit of serving my priority, which is making it safer for the commuters as they get off the train. It'll make the crosswalk a little shorter in length as they come off the train, and so I think that's more what you were referring to.
Yeah, and again, deadline was probably the wrong word, but I think he suggested that we give them some ideas of what we're going to do.
Well, I think I was very clear in my email.
You were.
The email was very clear what I discussed and how we should proceed. And based on your workload, I think the schedule will work out just fine. What's critical here is it has to be a traffic study. It has to also have the fire department understand what vehicles we can get around in that area to make sure there's no decrease in fire service to those residents. In addition to that, the residents who are directly impacted should make some sort of statement, right? They should be involved in this process to some degree so we understand what they want. Again, I've gone over these plans very carefully with Mr. Rothenbiller. I'm an architect, he's an engineer. I think we understand what we're trying to achieve here. Again, this is within a timetable that we talked about from the spring. This would happen in the fall sometime, when we would have the road work done in conjunction with the plantings. Right now, what I instructed 3TC to do is heavily plant those areas, so we can see what impact it would have. Right now, I think they're doing a terrific job. When you go down Main Avenue, in some perspective views, it looks like a forest, which is exactly what we were trying to achieve, to make sure we get as much vegetation, large specimen shrubs and trees as possible. So again, my email was very clear.
It was clear, but I think they've certainly done a great job so far, and it does look a bit like a forest. But I think the area that Trustee Kelly just mentioned, they're going to be limited to what they could put in without getting that curb moved out.
Trustee Chester has to be studied, right?
Oh, I understand that. I understand
The
that.
engineers in the village will attack this once they get their workload up to
It is on the
some
agenda.
point.
No, it definitely is, and as far as the traffic,
For me.
Commissioner Jackson was kind enough to join Mr. Rothenbill and ourselves to take a look at it, and he seemed to be okay with it, with some changes, some minor changes. And I appreciate Commissioner Jackson for you coming out that day.
I really would like to know from the fire departments what their requirements are.
Turning radiuses, approach.
Thank you.
Superintendent, in regard to a much smaller issue, I just wanted to confirm, as you may recall, at the end of the last meeting, we had touched upon the idea of having a drawing done of adding a row of parking to the Stewart Avenue parking lot at Stewart Field. I simply wanted to confirm that's in the queue at the building department.
It is, Mr. Kelly. I actually have a site plan here. We are studying this with the engineer as well. Went over the parking study as far as possibly creating 2 schematic designs. Hopefully should have that in front of the board.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, Giuseppe.
Thank you.
Next, Recreation Commissioner Paul Blake. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Recreation has nothing on the agenda this evening. I will be happy to answer any questions the board may have. I'd just like to note that the pool opened last Saturday to a nice crowd, nice reception, and compliments to all of the pool members who actually did what we asked them to do and came down early for their photos. There were no obnoxiously long lines. Everything went very smoothly. The new cards were issued, and we've already stopped several people trying to get in using last year's card. So the program is working so far.
Due diligence.
Thank you all.
Thank you. I'm going to call on DPW Director Anthony DeRosa. First one. How are you, Anthony?
All right, good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, Board of Trustees. Public Works has several items on the agenda tonight. First, we'll start with engagement of professional services, DAC Services of New York Incorporated. This is our 1B operator, and the contract extension is for the period of July 18, 2022 to July 17, 2023. Village Council has approved this agreement as to form, and it will be paid for out of the operating budget. Next up is engagement of professional services, water equipment maintenance, contract, Hatch Services. Board authorization is requested to engage Hatch Incorporated to perform semi-annual maintenance on the chlorine analyzer, pH probe, and nitrate analyzers in the amount of $51,071.47. The chlorine analyzers monitor chlorine levels, and the pH probes maintain the pH levels at the village wells. Nitrate analyzers monitor the nitrate levels at the Clinton Road well. Hatch Incorporated will calibrate the analyzers, monitor them twice a year, and respond to emergencies when equipment needs adjustment. Next up is professional services contract for a SCADA system, Eagle Control Corp. Board authorization is requested to engage Eagle Control Corp. For the supervisory control and data acquisition system and well controls for the period of July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2023, plus the cost of parts. Rates remain the same as last year. This is actually setting up rates for potential services. Next item is renewal of rates, water quality testing for PACE Analytical Services. Board authorization is requested to approve the rates for laboratory analytical services with PACE Analytical Services Incorporated. This is for the village drinking and groundwater testing as required by the Nassau County and New York State Health Departments. Effective June 15th, the pricing will include an 8.6% inflationary surcharge on all invoices. The village is also required to sample the lead and copper program. Next up is the agreement for the recycling truck. Board authorization is requested for the village to borrow a recycling truck from Sanitary District 6, Town of Hempstead. Our current recycling truck is down and going in for service. And Village Council actually approved this agreement as to form. I believe next order is for Mr. Swazi to sign off on it. Next I have award of bids for sorted clothing for Public Works. This is part of a union contract we're required to purchase for the rank and file. Estimated cost is $6,000. Next up is the curb and sidewalk road improvement contract. Board authorization is requested to award the bid for the curb sidewalk and road improvement contract to Pratt Brothers. He was the low bidder for a cost of $5,438,567.33. Pricing is based upon unit cost per item. The total cost includes contingency items that may or may not be needed during the term of the contract. Expenditures are not to exceed the budgeted amounts without additional funding authorized by the Board of Trustees. Next up is Village Hall Office Asbestos Abatement Ceiling Removal, 2022. Board authorization is requested to reject the low bid from Mara Contracting Group, Incorporated, as they do not meet the specifications. Board authorization is requested to award the bid to the second low bidder, B&Y Consulting Corporation. For an estimated cost of $52,806, contingent upon additional testing of the floor area during demolition. This will be paid for out of the capital budget. If anybody has any questions, Mr. Suarez will be happy to answer. No, Ralph, you told me that before, yes.
Ralph, question for you. The curb sidewalk road improvement contract, is that something that was known beforehand? I mean, can you give us some background for it?
I'm sorry, I said,
The curb sidewalk and road improvement, the $5 million. So,
yes.
what does that cover and how long has it been out there?
So, first of all, it'll be a contract we can renew for 2 years, so there's a one-year contract. Pratt Brothers does an excellent job. So what we do is we put out a contract and get unit cost, linear cost of concrete for curb and square footage for sidewalks and things like that, asphalt. So our actual budget is in the $2 million range. We're not going to spend $5 million. It's just the way, I didn't actually write this, but we have about $2.2 million in funding available for this work. So Pratt will come in and, based on the road list we have from Mr. Baroni, he's the senior engineer who oversees the road program, and we're using the report from the Lero Group to ascertain which roads are the best candidates, subject to change. And and we have full design specs. So we have design specs from us include drainage, the handicap ramps, drop curbs and aprons and sidewalks. So basically we just get these prices, and then Mr. Baroni will now take the roads that were designed by LKMA under an engineering services contract, and he can, based on what's in those design specs, he can actually assign a specific cost each one to see how many roads we can do.
Okay.
That's how it works.
Okay. Thank you.
May I just make a notation that when you look at the number and it says curbs, sidewalks, and roads, it should be the obverse. The roads are the big cost, and the curbs and sidewalks are incidental to the work that is being done on the roadway. Correct?
Yes, point taken. The big item should go first.
Thank you.
You are correct, sir.
Thank you, Anthony. Good job. Village Council. Peter, how might
Good evening, Mayor and the Board. Doing well. And as is customary, I have no single item on the agenda emanating from my office, but we were of assistance to the various department heads in arranging to finalize their items to get them on the agenda. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you. Village Administrator, Ralph Swanson, do you have anything else to contribute?
Good evening, Mayor, trustees, members of the public. A couple of things, Mayor. I want to just let you know that the bacterial lab results from the filled water tank came back as negative, which is good. We're waiting for inorganic compounds and POCs, which stands for principal organic compounds.
So the tank is full?
The tank is full, and we couldn't test it till it was full. We actually started filling it a couple of meetings ago, but because of the hot weather and the fact we had only 3 wells running, the water sat at about 13 feet into the bowl. We dumped that and refilled it last week in about 3 days. And once it was filled, we could take the samples. We expect the health department in tomorrow for an on-site visit. So as soon as they give us clearance, we're going to put that well back onto our SCADA system, put it back in operation. We'll move from
what we call system pressure with booster pumps maintaining pressure throughout the village, to atmospheric pressure, which is a steadier, more predictable thing, which will help us a lot with things like groundwater. Plus, we have 1 million gallons of water stored now that we didn't have before. So that's one update. The other thing is I want to just add a little color to one of Mr. DeRosa's items. Item 7 was the Hawk maintenance contract. This is a full maintenance contract. Any broken parts they'll fix. They will do the calibration twice a year. They'll do firmware updates. They'll be there for emergency calls. And this contract in its totality takes into all of the AOP systems. When they're not fully operational, they should be by the end of this month, but it takes all new AOP devices have peroxide analyzers, which are very sophisticated. So this is a very important contract to the village. And there are a couple of items that Ms. Wu mentioned. There's a transfer for item B, 2B, for natural gas. As we know, energy costs have gone up. Also, she mentioned as part of her treasurer's report the success of the hiring of FBS for the old outstanding traffic tickets. The problem was when we did the budget in the prior year that they come on midstream. There was no budget for them to pay them, so this transfer is required to fulfill that expense. And the recycling truck that Mr. DeRosa talked about, District 6 is lending us one of their recycling trucks. I want to thank Deputy Superintendent Dominic Stanko for being the go-between with the District 6 folks and the village attorney for going through the language, make sure it satisfies the village's needs. But item 3, the transfer of $32,000, the existing truck we have 2 trucks that we've obtained through grants. They're fully paid for by these grants. They're $250,000 each. We're obligated to run those trucks for 10 years. This one truck broke down and needs $31,000 and change worth of repairs. So we'll have the District 6 truck for our use while it's being repaired. That transfer is to go into the account to pay for this because we have other maintenance items for these trucks, like new tires every year and stuff like that. So we didn't want to exhaust the fund. And that's all I have. Mayor, unless you have any questions.
Any questions from the trustees? Anybody? No?
Chief, I have one question, just circling back to the plans for the Memory Line train station area, because I didn't get an idea. I know you said there are some projects ahead, but when will the engineering department get to that? Because I know a lot of work has gone in, and I know we have a resident here tonight who's drawn up sketches. They look wonderful, and what I don't want to see is us running into is there information, I know the fire chief is here, that you're waiting for before doing the plans, or is it just a matter of other projects coming before? What I am concerned about is running into delays on our end, and suddenly they're doing the roads, and we haven't come together. I think it's got the potential to really do a lot to enhance the visual over there, and it affects a lot of residents. So what exactly is the timeline, and is there something that the engineering department's waiting for in order to do the plans?
I think a discussion with the fire chief is necessary. We do have the plans. We can also reach out to 3TC, which has a full survey of that whole area. Like I mentioned earlier, the mayor's email is very clear. We do have outstanding projects that we want to get to. We're going to do our best to put that on the agenda, and we'll get it done as soon as we can. I respect Paul's drawings and his efforts, so thank you very much, Paul, for getting that over to us. We're going to take a look at that, everything together, and make sure it works, what's best for the village. It's on the agenda.
All right, so I was just looking for a timeline, that's not clear to me, but I guess I'm not getting that. We can't say the fall, because there are other steps. We know there's gonna need to be a public hearing, there are other things that could delay, so I'm just asking, when are we gonna have those plans?
I thought...
If the board directs to put other projects aside, we'd be more than happy to.
All right. We were thinking about October, am I correct?
October's fine.
For the plans?
No, for everything to be completed.
Wait, my question was a much simpler one, when will those plans be done? Because once the plans are done, there will be other steps that need to be
Mary,
taken.
they need to get input, possibly from a traffic consultant, certainly from the fire department. We have to have an engineering group look at the details. We have to have coordination with the Oil and Railroad, 3TC. So that's going to happen in the next couple of months.
That's correct.
I'm sorry, so we're getting a traffic consultant before we do the plans? Is that what the...
No, we have plans.
Is?
Paul Rothenbuilder, who was an engineer, was a member of the Third Track Committee, has come up with some schemes to enlarge the islands, right? That has to be vetted carefully to make sure that we don't have any negative impact on those residents.
That is a full road change, and it's an agreement that's approved by this board. I
Excuse
would
me.
need to spend the
Then
time
it
to
has to go to
investigate.
public hearing.
That's correct.
And there's a whole process we have to go through. So month by month, you can put out the schedule, and I would suggest work on the schedule and get it to us by Monday. Just an outline schedule so Mary understands what the schedule is.
Thank you. Because I've spoken to others too, and I'm not the only one looking for
No,
this
she's
detail.
not.
And the process is important. The length of that process is why I'm asking, when are we taking the next step?
And I think the mayor is saying a schedule for Monday, outline the steps we're gonna take is excellent. And I think,
That can be done, correct?
That can be done.
excellent. Love to see that. Thank you.
Can you do Sunday, Giuseppe?
I work 7 days, you know that.
I don't want to put any more pressure on you, but no problem. So are there any other comments from the trustees? Okay, good.
Yeah, let me just, why not? I just want to give further recognition to the fire department. The comment by Chief Kern was understated and way too modest. And it should be recognized by the village how many hours the fire department puts in that nobody sees. And in this particular case, I very much encourage everyone to take a look at the joingcfdny.com, the video that was put together as a result of the attendance of the department on its own time to a convention in Cleveland, one of the high spots probably of their lives. But more importantly, they were fortunate in being able to obtain basically a donation of a firm that prepares videos. The value of this is in excess of $20,000, but that was only part of it. The other part is when baking a cake, you have to get all the ingredients. The same thing happens when you put together a video. You have to get all of the documentation, you have to get the clips, you have to get the trucks, you got to have the speech and put it together. And there were hundreds of hours that were spent not only by the chiefs, but the members of the department in putting together an extraordinary video, which I am certain will be very beneficial to the members of the department in its recruiting efforts. So to that extent, modesty aside, the chiefs really need the accolades of the residents for the efforts that they take on our behalf. Thank you.
I concur with that. That was an excellent job.
Mayor?
Thank you, trustee.
Yeah.
Serino.
Mayor, can I make a comment?
Yes,
Mayor,
yes, you can.
Yeah. Yeah, here I am, I'm on video. So, I wanted to, Bruce, I'm glad you brought it up. I also want to compliment the fire department, Chief Kern, the other chiefs, and also I want to compliment and thank Commissioner Jackson and all the officers. They've both been very, very busy. Their teams have been busy. They're collaborating terrific. We've had a lot of incidents over the last week or so, even the past couple of weeks, and they really responded terrifically, both departments, saving lives and putting themselves ahead of their own safety. So I just want to thank them also. So I just want to pass it on.
Thank you, Tom.
I want to echo what trustees Torino and O'Brien said, but I also want to speak in defense of Cleveland, Jacobs Field, and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Thank you, Charlie. Okay, moving along. Are there any citizen comments on agenda items? Please come up to the podium, state your name and address, please. Come on up. These are agenda items only.
Leo Simler, 67 Huntington Road. I'd like to comment on item 5, a renewal agreement between the village and the Delphi University for parking at Community Park. Mr. Mayor, about 8 or 9 years ago, Mayor Episcopia complained that Adelphi University was one of the only universities, colleges on Long Island that didn't pay something to the local government for municipal services, fire, police, and others. He said, in contrast, C.W. Post, I think that was the school he mentioned, C.W. Post gave $250,000 to the local government. And of course, it was a voluntary payment. At a subsequent meeting, Mayor Episcopia said that Adelphi University had then agreed to pay Garden City $25,000 a year. It was 10% of what C.W. Post was giving, but it was a start, he said. About 2 or 3 months ago, I heard Mrs. Wu say that Adelphi University no longer pays that voluntary $25,000 gift statement. And I would ask you, Mr. Mayor, to please consider asking one of the staff to look into the files and find that original contract. And whoever sends out the bills, to send a bill to Adelphi University for that fee, retroactive to whenever they stop paying it. And I would hope, Mr. Mayor, that you would, and the board would seriously consider not approving this renewal agreement until such time as Adelphi University honors their commitment to pay that $25,000.
Mr. Stimbler, so you know, I have trustee Larry Marciano in charge of a business development committee for the village, and he's looking into this.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
We anticipated this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Mr. Stimbler, I agree with you completely. I think, without a doubt, particularly talking to Chief Pern, I think this guy's spent quite a bit of time over there, right? As well as probably Commissioner Jackson, because college kids are college kids, right? We've all been there. I'm not sure whether, and we're trying to do the research here to see if there ever was a check cut, right, between Adelphi and Garden City. We're not sure whether that's true or not. But regardless, we are planning on going over there with the committee to talk to the administration to say, we do provide you quite a bit of service free, right? Which is actually a cost to us, the village residents. So we will keep this board abreast as well as the residents abreast of those communications.
Okay, all right, thank you. One other item, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank Mr. Burke for the trees that he planted throughout the village, but especially at what is it called, that Triangle Park by Osborne, where there's no houses, but it really needed those trees. And I want to thank you, Mayor, for putting in your weekly column the importance of us residents watering those trees, watering our trees that are in front. And I hope you'll consider putting it back in. That same request was to water our trees. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other residents in the audience that want to speak on agenda items? No one? You can put that on Zoom.
Does anybody on Zoom wish to speak about an agenda item?
Okay. Next order of business is the approval of the minutes of the previous Board of Trustees meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the June 2nd board meeting?
I'll make a motion, we approve those minutes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Let's move on to the consent calendar. Am I correct?
Yes, sir. Customarily, as far as the trustee wishes to remove.
Right, that's exactly right. Does any trustee want to remove anything from the consent calendar or make any changes?
I believe number 15 needs to be discussed. No, excuse me, 14.
Yes. Okay. Number 14? What's the discussion?
Well, it's great news on the website front. Did you want to just share with the residents?
We remove it, then we vote, and I'll discuss it, or if you want me to discuss it now, whatever you prefer.
Let's discuss it now.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, item number 4 is a website redesign. 14 is a website redesign that has been, okay.
I got it.
Here's deja vu, I'll start all over. Number 14 is is the village is engaging a firm in order to redo the website for the village. For those of you that do not know, you are now looking at municipal light speed in getting this interviewed and enacted and passed. This was done through the efforts of many individuals, but more importantly, I'd like to recognize Ms. Samuels for her efforts. She didn't think I was going to mention it. I know that. She was off in the corner and said, "Do not embarrass me." But in any event, you know, it happens. The village here operates through volunteers. And those people that step up and engage themselves in a particular project and show that they have expertise is what makes it a really good place. And through her efforts and that of others, it will look much better. The website is going to bring us into a more cooperative ability to interface with the residents. More things will be able to be done online, and you'll be able to find things quicker. So this is the first step by the village in order to get the web design up and running. As much as we'd like it to be done overnight, it cannot be. But when it starts to roll out in a couple of months, we're going to be seeking the individual comments of the residents as to what works, what we need, what you think you would want. But this is, in fact, an item that has been lagging behind and is now in the forefront. And I think it needs recognition that we're coming along nicely. Thank you.
I think you may want to also add, I mean, the company you have here, how many names do we have? 2 dozen, 3 dozen companies that we looked at? Yeah. Not only how do we get to this company, not only a question of cost, right, which is something we always concern ourselves with, but my numbers are right. These guys have done 7,500 other municipalities. We spoke to another company that did 2,500. We spoke to a couple that have never done a municipality. We do not want to be the test case. Sorry, not happening. So I think collectively we met with them a couple of times. I think they've got the credentials, they've got the experience, they've got the cred that I think will help us take what we have today and actually put us into a position where, you know, we are in line with and then to exceed some of the competition. So it was a very entertaining experience.
Well, I want to add something. I want to add that thank you, Susie, for all your help, but I also want to thank Karen Altman and Ryan,
Yes.
because together those three helped us get to the end line on the final RFP, and also to make the decision to go to Civic Plus. So I thank you very much for all your efforts. Any other comments?
Trustee Torino, given that the discussion has just taken place, do you want to restore the item to the consent calendar?
Yes, I do.
Without objection.
So item 14 is in place.
Yes, sir.
Any other comments? See that there are other comments, and make a motion to approve the consent calendar. Second. Second? All in favor? Say aye. Aye. Consent calendar is approved. Let's now go on to non-agenda items. Citizen comments, please. Anybody in the audience that wants to step up? Oh, don't show me your plans. Those plans.
You can show us anything you want.
Share with the audience, Paul.
I'm Paul Rothmiller from 216 Kensington Road. Let's start off on the right foot then. Thank you, Mayor, for allowing me to be on the third track committee, and thank you for letting me work with the landscaping crew. I think they are also doing an excellent job. They've been very nice about the whole deal. That takes us down to the next step. The next plan on going over to Strawberry Fields and to Kensington Road where I live. And that's what I want to bring up before I talk about the drawings a little bit. Kensington Road, we lost all our vegetation in December of 18. 3TC has promised us in May of 20, every season since then, don't worry about it, Mr. Rothenberg, you're gonna get it. We don't get it. Believe me, we don't get it. We are gonna get it now, and again, I thank you so much for that. But going back to what the trustees were saying, I think it's important that we push as much data forward as we can to 3TC, so they're not allowed to delay anything. Everything you suggest to them, they delay. You ask about the lighting. They've been working on the lighting for 2 years. I mean, give me a break. So what I want to do is just briefly run through it. We're going to leave each person a package. There's 4 drawings. It's going to take me about 10 minutes to talk. I'm going to ask you one question, and then I'll shut up and leave. Yes, that way. And then I have some 4 quality ones here, if anybody in the audience wants to look at these as well.
These are bright lights.
Just do this very quickly. If you look at the first drawing, I went last night and took pictures. When we talk about blocking off Houston Road, which is one of the things we're talking about, a lot of complaints have come from residents as they look up the street at night. So if you start on the bottom, you have Houston Road on the lower corner. Going across is Wellington. Then we have Roxbury, and then we have Meadbrook. So when we're talking about adding vegetation at the end of Houston Road, that's only taking 25% of the problem. We have to consider all of it, and that's what the plans do. If you look on the upper left corner, and it's kind of a coincidence, not by mistake, but on Meadbrook Road, the lower picture depicts when I was shooting to the right, and I didn't realize it, and then I looked back, but some of the vegetation has been stored on the left-hand upper corner here. It's blocking the station, and it hasn't even been put in the ground yet, so I mean, the vegetation is doing a good job. We have a lot of talented people, like you mentioned, in the village. Bill Lucano took some of my garbage drawings and put them into Zoom or Google Earth, I guess. Here we go. I don't want to embarrass myself. But this is Google Earth showing the existing station, and the lower drawing shows some of the parking. We're working with Commissioner Jackson to determine how many parking spots are actually there, and where you can park with a permit, you can't park with a permit. But on the parking where you pull in on the 90-degree turn, actually, there's 11 spots. The next drawing is my trash that started this thing, but this is showing the magnitude that we're talking about. We're talking about coming from Nassau Boulevard all the way down to Meadbrook and making changes in there. And then I'll go fairly quickly, I hope, and go back to Bill's drawing. And what we see here on Maryland Avenue on the upper picture, what we've suggested is that we block off Houston Road, and we know, and these vegetation that was from Houston Road to Nassau Boulevard was primarily evergreens, so it blocked all light at night. Coming back on the other side of that, going west over to Wellington, that was right now the city's trees. We suggested that we replanted with evergreens. One of the biggest items on here, and it's probably not depicted enough, but where it says evergreens extend to Meadowbrook Road. So we're talking about from, it says Meadowbrook? There we go. So I can't read. So it's about 400 feet and 20 feet wide, so we're talking 8,000 square feet of landscaping that's required there. And that would block off the train station pretty nicely. The lower drawing, by blocking off Houston Road, allows us to put in additional parking spots in here on an angle that would be able to cut the amount of, how hard it is to get in and out of the spot. We also realize that the existing station has some handicap ramps in it, and we should accommodate them and possibly even parking for handicap as well. Again, we're working with the police commissioner to determine how many spots are there. I believe overall we're going to end up with more spots when we complete this. And you had such a long discussion before, I won't go on and on, but my main question is tonight, I know that you need a petition, and there's 2 different schools of thought. People say should we get a petition that's Houston, Wellington, Roxbury, and Meadbrook? And I've been told, yes, that's what you want, but my opinion is no, that's not what I want, because I live on Kensington, and I'm concerned. I'm concerned that it looks like Times Square at night, and I want my name on that list. I don't want it just to be the residents.
Well, not necessarily a petition, but at least input from those residents that are impacted, right? I always hear...
We had some volunteers here.
Paul, I always hear, everybody says this, and people, that the consensus is this, but I want to know which people are saying this, right? And I understand those people that on Main are definitely impacted by the Royal Railroad. I've discussed this with the 3TC about the light levels, and you know as an engineer, they're looking at the amount of foot candles, and they're afraid someone's going to trip, and they're going to be sued, you know, and their attorneys have to defend those cases, right? That's what they're concerned about. So I said, fine, leave the lighting the way it is. I'll try to screen it off somehow. I would even adventure to put in bamboo. If I could put bamboo up against that Royal Railroad sidewalk, it would close it up in a year. That's how fast it would go. But again, we have to work with them, and I appreciate the drawings. I think, you know, you and I have been talking about this now for what, 6 months, right?
That's part of the frustration, yes.
Well, you shouldn't be frustrated, because I've learned something by being in government. It takes that much time.
I hear you.
Okay? In the private sector, we would do it in 2 months.
But going back to the petition, do you want us, we have people here that have volunteered to go out and get petitions, or they can speak tonight, or whatever you like.
No, I think if you get something, a consensus of people that say they want to close off this roadway, right? But I think there's other issues as well. To me, fire safety is really, really critical, right? I want to make sure that the fire department can get their vehicles around this enlargement.
Agree 100%.
What?
I agree 100%.
Yeah, and once I have that information, I'll be more comfortable.
And in traffic and the school buses, we should be looking at everything, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, again, I don't know if all the residents are for this or against it, I have no idea. I just want to make sure that they give them an opportunity.
Thank you, appreciate your time.
Thanks,
Thank you so
Paul.
much.
Always a pleasure.
Yes. And Paul, before you go away, can I make a comment? Paul?
Uh-oh. Go ahead, Tom.
It's Tom, how are you, Paul?
Good. I think good.
First of all, thanks for all your great work. The only concern I have, which I shared with you, you know, as you know, I lived on the corner of Maryland, State, and Houston there on the corner. My mom did, you know, up till 2 years ago. If I was still there, I'd be concerned about blocking that road off. You and I discussed that. Because you can't, if you block the road off, it's very difficult to go in the other direction. So I think getting the residents' input, as the mayor said, will be important.
Right. Unfortunately, you're not here, Tom, and I can't show it to you, but we talked with Police Commissioner Jackson as well. We suggested on, I don't know how to show you, but we suggested that as you're going east on Main Avenue, you'll be able to now to make a left-hand turn and loop back up onto the north side where you'll be picking up people. So it allows access, anybody that came down Houston to pick up somebody could only make a left, or that way, but now they can pick up from where the pickup area is, not from the parking area. So we have to really coordinate where the pickup is and where the parking is. I think the pickup area was designed to be behind the parking spots when people pull out. Now everybody will have access to that, including people coming up Houston that didn't have it before. So that's something we'd like the traffic commissioner to look at, and the police commissioner is, you know, taking a look as well.
And yeah, so when I'm back, I'll be happy to look at those new plans, Paul. That'd be great.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Paul, in terms of a petition or getting community approval, I think it is important to speak to the people who live on the 4 streets you have listed here, Houston, Wellington, Roxbury, and Meadbrook, from Maine to Somerset. I mean, to survey those that section of those 4 blocks, I think
We have
is
some
pretty
people here
important.
tonight if you'd like them.
Yeah, Paul, why don't you have them speak, whoever wants, that's in that area that's here tonight, please feel free to come up and speak.
There you go. Hi, I'm Bill Lucano. I live at 223 Houston Road. I'm a lifelong Garden City resident. My parents grew up here. And I'm about 4 houses from Maryland Station. And it's like living down the block from Kennedy Airport. It's lit up like the 4th of July. And I talked to a few residents and they said, we can see it from Stewart Avenue. I mean, that's how bad it is. So I'm here to support Paul. I helped him with his, looking at the architectural drawings. I'm not an architect. I'm not even an artist, but I did screen grabs and put something together so lay people could really understand what it would look like when it's done. To get a lot of greenery in there. I was in favor of blocking off the island. I thought that was very important because there's no other way to do it in that section. There's no, right against the tracks, you can't like, grow big evergreens, and the island's already there. Also, the station, LAR, did a great job of making everything ADA compliant, and the town is not. There's no handicap parking anywhere. And my idea was, let's expand the parking as the island is expanded, and to 11 to 25 spots, put in a couple of handicap parking spaces there, paint the curbs a different color for parking, no stopping, no standing, pickup, drop off. It's the only station in town that doesn't have a true plaza, like Stewart Manor or Nassau Boulevard or Garden City, and even Country Light Press. There's a lot of traffic, so it has to be safe. We have to be practical about it. We really need to think this through. Obviously, the fire department, the police department. Right now, if you're, mailing letters at that mailbox there, and you're driving around the island, you're not allowed to cut across that crosshatch there. Right. It's all the way to the curb, so that's illegal to drive through. So Paul's idea there was very good. He had moved that section away, so now there is a roadway that you can circle around that island. And we tilted the parking spots so it's an easy in and out. Tonight, the commuters were just flying off that train station. There's no crosswalks, there's nothing, and I know it's under construction right now, but there's no sidewalks, there's no lighting, they're just running all over the place, and a car's gonna hit them. I, years ago, got the stop sign at the end of Houston Road, and it was a lot of foot dragging and stuff, and I had to bring up the fact that there's a school bus stop there. So, yes, the police department did a very good study. There's been no accidents. I don't know if we really need one. Do we really need to have an accident to put something in? You don't want kids to be involved. So I'm going to hold the same type of line right now by saying the station needs to be improved. And I know there's no deadline, but there is a timeline. And that's why I've entrusted Susie Samuels to help, because she gets things done with light speed. So we're going to canvass the area. We're going to do those 4 blocks. From Houston all the way to, I guess it's, yeah, and we're going to make sure that we do that all the way to Somerset, get the signatures, get the input from residents. I think it's really important. But most of all, let's make this town look like it should look and operate the way it should be. But that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the audience? Anyone else? Come on up.
Hi, Robert Veselotti, 32 Brixton, longtime resident, and was raised on Wellington, 3 houses from this station, so I'm very familiar with the area, and support Paul's work and the work of his committee to change and improve this area tremendously. Vegetation is certainly at stake, and so is a timeline, so I really appreciate you guys talking about the timeline tonight. Because, again, I have photos going back to November of 2018. This could be 4 years this fall when they started tearing down trees and gutting the area. So 4 years is a long time. Putting this back together with planned traffic flow and closing off some of these traffic islands, I think makes a lot of sense. You can add parking. It'll buffer the area tremendously. The lighting is horrific at night. So I really commend the work of these guys with the drawings. They really did a great job. And so, again, I just think that keeping the pressure on the community funds, because those funds are important for us to get, and coordinating the timing with the railroad is of paramount importance. Again, safety does matter, but so does community beautification, and that area does need some work. And I also, with the police commissioner here, I think that it's important that we think about reducing the speed there. And, Creighton Manning had some studies where they used these, like a table, they called it, a crossing table of some sorts, in those drawings, which were excellent. They're really wide, they're not a speed hump, but it's a perfect thing for crossing, very safe. We could also reduce the speed to like 15 miles an hour through there. So something else to consider, speed limit. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments? Please come up.
Hi, Judy Courtney, 3 Tremont Street. I had a question on the topic that was mentioned about the striping at the fields at Stewart Avenue, the parking fields. So I was curious about what the result of the study was, that what was going to be done there on parking prior to making any new actions?
No, having that drawing done is part of the study. We want to know, we are evaluating alternatives to the Raymond Court parking lot. And one of those alternatives is adding a row of parking to the Stewart Avenue parking lot, which would add 22 spaces, including 2 or 3 handicap spaces. And the buildings department is doing drawings to determine how many feet the fence there would have to be moved back towards the fields. And because of the enormous gap between the 2 existing rows of parking, which is twice what you have at 7th Street parking, we know that we don't need another 50%. It's less than that we need. And that's what we want to know in terms of evaluating that alternative. How far do we have to move the fence? Is it 7 feet? Is it 10 feet? What is it? And how will that impact, if at all, on the playing fields? So that's one of the alternatives that we're evaluating. And one step in evaluating that alternative is to have this drawing done.
So perhaps I was incorrect, my thought or assumption on a study was to say how much overflow parking there was, how many people parked where, is 22 spaces more or not enough? So striping is a solution, right, to the problem, which I understand. It's not a bad solution, I'm not even saying that, but I'm just not clear on what I thought was going to be done, which was to say how many people use the parking lot, how many people use Stewart Field. As a result of that, I know that there are 300 cars there on Saturday.
That's constantly going on each weekend, evaluating how many cars have parked in the Stewart School parking lot.
Okay, that's what I was wondering about. Okay.
And, there's no statistics on it yet, but that's what's going on, that evaluation. How many are parking?
Got it. Okay, sorry, Charlie, go ahead. No, that's
You got it, I got it.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience? Please come on up.
Kathleen Norrell for Maryland Avenue. I had addressed the board a couple of board meetings ago about the potential of Paul's plans, and Paul knows my opinion at this point, which I think I expressed to all of you people, but that is not what I'm here for tonight. I was very curious at our last POA meeting, someone questioned, and I didn't know the answer, about the cars that are parked. You have the parking spaces like so, and then there are cars that are parked right at the curb near the railroad tracks, and I deliberately read the sign, and it said no parking and parking with permit only. Who gets those permits to park there? I mean, personally, if I parked, in that little parking area, and I wouldn't want to park next to the curb because if it's dark and somebody pulls out, they'd go right into the side door of your car. But my question is, there are cars parked there all the time. I had just thought they were from the construction group. I have not gone to look at the permits on the cars, but can anybody answer me who gives out the permits to those people that are parked there? Anyone? Going? Going? Do I have a higher bidder?
They go to Village Hall and they get permits. They have to show residency, and I believe they, once they're satisfied, they get a permit.
That's not for a specific spot.
Yeah, it's not for a
It's
specific
just a
spot,
general-
but
that's
anybody
what I
with a
was
railroad
thinking.
permit can park up there.
Right.
And use the railroad.
Rather than using that as parking for handicapped. It's just general. Anybody who wants to apply for a parking permit in the village can pull there.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
In terms of handicap spaces, we have discussed, and I have discussed with Paul, the idea that the spaces directly opposite the exit from the handicap ramp, those 2 or 3 spaces will become handicap parking spaces once that exit is finalized.
Any other comments from the audience? Come on up, please.
Don Castler, 212 Houston Road. I've lived there for 36 years. And I just want to compliment Paul and Bill for all the work they've done, because it is, it's like blindingly bright there. And they tore the trees down almost 4 years ago. And I know it takes time to get things done, pandemic, whatever, but we need something there to block the light. It's just unacceptable. So,
We're working on it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the audience? Come on up, please. Mr. Russo.
I'm Carl Russo from 6 Edgemere Road. Last month, there was an agenda item that was taken off the agenda about the dog park. And I thought it was going to be talked about tonight. Is that item still going to be?
You can talk about any non-agenda items, not on the agenda.
It's not on the agenda.
It's not on the agenda. You can talk about it.
It's not. No, but so we're talking about non-agenda items now?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not an agenda item?
Right.
Okay. So, but I was under the impression that eventually it would be an agenda item, and what I'm asking is, will it ever be an agenda item?
I would have Paul Blake talk about this, please.
As those of you who were here at the last meeting remember, the board removed the item from the agenda. They did not defer it, and they did not table it. They removed it. So unless the Board of Trustees wishes to bring that item back to the agenda, it will stay off the agenda.
Okay, now, this is an item that was started last year, okay, and it just died, and now it seems to be given life again. What I'd like to know is, what makes this an item? Who starts this? Why is it that, there are things that are done that nobody really seems to know, and then all of a sudden it just disappears?
Mr. Russo, this issue about a dog park was around when I was a trustee 20 years ago. So you have a situation where there is individuals who are in favor of the idea of having a dog park. The question is where? In my backyard, in your backyard? And in order to have a consensus, there has to be either research in the issue or a need for the issue. What occurs, and has occurred, is that there was, at the Recreation Commission, a desire for the board to give its input as to whether there was a desire for this issue of a dog park on 2nd Street to go forward. There was not. So essentially what that means is, unless there is a pressing need that is raised again and is fully vetted, it will not come up unless somebody moves it along. So to answer your question, I doubt if I will be here in 20 years, but it may come up again between now and then.
Well, I would just like to say, I don't have a dog. So this is not something that's going to, well, my point is this, that we seem to have a lot of laws passed, and a lot of things that come up. And if you have a dog park, then you have to maintain this dog park.
Of course.
My suggestion was to have 4 dog parks, one in each area, because nobody wants it in their own backyard, okay? But that's never gonna happen. Also, I did some research, and there is a law that says every dog is supposed to have a license, and you're supposed to pay for this license. And does anybody pursue this matter? I'm sure nobody does.
By the way, on our new website, you're gonna be able to register your dog.
Yes, do you expect the police commissioner to go out and give tickets to people who don't register?
Mr. Russo, apparently we do give out dog licenses.
There are approximately 400 licensed dogs in the village at this time.
Okay, and how many dogs are in the village?
3,000.
You stated that you didn't think people were licensing their dogs. I simply stated there are 400 licensed dogs in the village.
400 out of 40,000, okay? The point that I'm trying to make is not necessarily the dog park. My point that I'm trying to make is we can't go around making laws that we can't enforce, okay? We also have a law that says you're supposed to curb your dog, and nobody enforces that, and nobody can enforce it. So maybe we should look through all of these laws and get rid of them, because nobody's enforcing them.
But then maybe we should double the police force, right?
Well, that's great too, but we have so much crime around that I couldn't see you going around trying to give tickets out for people.
We have priorities, yes.
You might think I'm being foolish, but I'm just trying to say, don't pass things. I mean, Mary has went out and really fought for the leaf blowers, which I give her a lot of credit for. What's going to happen in 2 years when it's not only the new thing? Are you going to be able to enforce the landscapers from having their license and doing the thing? It's impossible.
We're still in the review, and don't worry about that. We'll take care of that.
Okay,
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Russo.
Thank you. Any other comments, please, from the audience? And there's your friend, Mr. Garay.
Am I his friend after that? Absolutely. First of all, good evening to all. May I wish all of you, you deserve it. It's the end of the season, right? You get a month off now, I think.
Well, we're going to summer session, right?
Yeah, summer session, so I don't know if we're all gonna go fishing with Cosmo or not, but I wish you good luck if you do. I don't know if more than 4 of you at a time can do it. It was good news to hear that the website is gonna be bigger and better. What I would ask is that regarding the St. Paul's Committee reports or ads or whatever you wanna call them, any other information be posted on this new wonderful website we're gonna have. And so that there also possibly can be interaction between the residents and the committee via that website. So everything is in a centralized location, everything can be consolidated in a way that it will be meaningful for everyone.
Steve, let me interrupt you for a moment. I believe it will take us about 4 months to get the website up and running. Is that correct, Susan? Right. So within a 4-month period, I'm not going to wait for the website to be up. We're going to start generating information to the public in different ways.
Understand. Well, obviously, there's already been 3 reports, and there's another one from what I understand through my sources.
Yes.
There's going to be another one tomorrow. So clearly, the information is being rolled out now, but eventually, if it's all consolidated at some reasonable period of time before the referendum, I would submit that that'll be very useful to everyone in the village. It also could be a facility for people to exchange information, to ask questions, and get answers.
Very good.
So we on the same page.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it. Can you come up forward, please?
Betsy Almeidas, 116 New Market Road, and I'm on the Communications Committee for the St. Paul's Committee. and we're having a town hall on Tuesday night, and we're gonna have a website, we have an email address, St. Paul's Comments at GardenCityNewYork.net, ny.net, and everything will be published, and we're trying to get up and rolling, but it took a little time getting approval from all you guys. But we're gonna have a lot of interaction, just so you know.
I'm sorry, where is it? Thank you.
What?
Where is it on Tuesday?
Oh, Tuesday night at Cluid Hall at 7:30.
There are flyers outside.
Tuesday, 7:30, and there's flyers outside on the counter.
Will that be on Zoom?
No, but we're gonna tape it, and we have it's just a nightmare to do Zoom, and we have a limited budget, so we don't wanna go too crazy.
So
So-
how would we'll be able to view it as a tape later?
Absolutely.
Where?
To be recorded.
Yeah.
We're working on that now. We're trying to do it on the cheap, like, we're trying not to spend too much money, so yeah. But you can email us any questions, and then we'll get it to the appropriate committee. So
It was
feel
just
free.
short notice, and I have the plans to be out of town, and I would really like to.
Well, we're just gathering information for the use committee, which I'm also on, to see what we could do with the building if we used it. And that's really what this is about. In the fall, we will have town halls where we talk about demolition and we talk about use and costs, because that's really what everybody wants to know. But that'll happen in the fall. This is just an information gathering thing from the residents. So,
Thank you.
but feel free to email us.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Any other comments, please? Come on up, please.
Wolf, 63 Fairmount. I have a few questions on the presentation, nothing in particular. I understand why we're doing it. But I have a copy of the preliminary marketing plan, and it said basically I'll be discussing engineering, design, usage, financial, and Superintendent Dr. Sinha speaking. Will she be speaking at this meeting on Tuesday night?
I don't think so. No.
Now, as far as the financial, has there been any coordination between Irene and the Finance Committee as far as bonding and bonding limitations and the increase in interest rates? Any back and forth?
Nothing yet. There's nothing,
At this point at
nothing
all?
on price if you don't have a design. So they're working on trying to get a design, right? And they're looking at demolition as well. So the price is not going to occur for another couple of months.
But you make a living being an architect doing estimates. Have you ever gone into a job? And
I don't do estimates. I have construction cost estimators that are consultants to me.
Okay.
I don't do estimates.
But don't they have a budget? When they start doing their building, don't they have a budget for the whole building?
No, I
You wanna spend
design
so much-
the
not you,
building,
but the
I
people you work with.
specify all the things that go into the building. I coordinate all the mechanical,
But
electrical,
okay,
plumbing work.
let's take you out of the equation.
And then, once we put the whole package together, it goes to the cost estimator. Right? And the cost estimator.
When a company starts to think about a building, they decide how much they want to pay.
That's a different way of doing it. It's a different way of doing it.
In my experience, not nowhere near yours. Okay.
You're an architect.
Okay.
Okay, no, you're an architect.
But you work with people who build buildings.
I've built several buildings in my lifetime, thank
And
you.
I think most clients will tell you up front, I don't want to spend more than numbers on.
I have clients that don't even give me a budget. Okay?
Okay.
That's how much you know. I have clients that don't even give me a budget. They tell me they want the best.
Private sector or public sector?
Private sector. Thank you. Any other comments, please? Anybody on Zoom?
No,
Please, come on up.
Hi, I'm Frank Coster, I'm at 135 Roxbury Road. I'm right by Stratford. I'm here to support Paul Rothenbiller's presentation and the drawings that he did for you. And vegetation is a solution, but how about asking the Long Island Railroad to dim the lights slightly?
We've been asking that for, I can't tell you how many months, that we've asked them to do that. They say that for security reasons at the platform, that's going to be difficult to do, but the last conversation I had, there was a possibility that they would be able to do it. So I can't give you any more details than that.
If they could cooperate, if you go to see, they redid Stewart Manor
Yes, I know.
train station, it's beautiful.
It is.
You go to other train stations, they're not so Luna Park.
Unfortunately, the stations that the railroad did along this 9.8 mile track, third track, are all very bright.
They're all the same.
Exactly.
From Elmont all the way through to, I think, Westbury, they're all the same.
And,
Yes,
Same
but
design.
Floral Park is quite elevated. Carl Place has a different approach to it.
New Hyde Park is terrible. I spoke to the mayor of New Hyde Park, he has the same
It's
objection.
absolutely terrible.
It is, the whole design was terrible.
Everything. I think that serious consideration has to be given to Paul's approach to solving a problem that the Long Island Railroad is unwilling to solve for us. And there's also the concern that the money that is there, if we wait too long, they may say, well, it's no longer there. So I think certain promptness on our part would be very advantageous to the village. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else in the audience, please? Anybody on Zoom?
Does anybody on Zoom have any comments?
Yes, it's Rich Correo, Beaver Road. Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I just want to be on record as the biggest fan of Paul Rockefeller, this plan. And, I think for me that the timing, again, is very important. And if we're going to go out and solicit support, which I'm very, very, very confident that we can do, because it is so awful and terrible, what they've done over in the area, it would be nice to be able to go out and talk to people about the actual design and, provide feedback that, for instance, the fire department has weighed in and all of the stakeholders have had their say. So for me, I guess to Mary's point as well, is the timing, the sequencing, and I know Giuseppe's going to put something together, to me very important because it's going to help us to really get the word out in an informed fashion so that Mayor and the trustees, you all have really informed resident input. But I think conceptually overall, something is absolutely needed there. And I really want to thank Paul for all of his work. I mean, it's the epitome of the kind of volunteerism that we want to see in a village like ours, and it should be applauded. So thank you all.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Rich. It's good hearing from Paul's second biggest fan.
Objection.
Third biggest fan.
Any other comments from the Zoom audience? Seeing none, Mayor,
I'd like to make a motion to go to executive session. Second?
Second.
This meeting is over, and we'll go to executive session. Thank you.